The pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good evening and welcome to the September 23rd Committee of the Whole meeting of the Milton Board of Education. I'll do the roll. Ms. Griffin is not with us tonight, obviously. I'll do the roll call. Megan Doyle.
Here.
Tracy Irby.
Here.
Lauren Mahler.
Here.
Michael Smith.
Here.
Una Petrosky.
Here.
Tom Kova.
Here.
Cindy Wolf-Boynton.
Here.
Scott Fermender.
Present.
Christy Preet.
Here.
And myself present, so we have all in attendance this evening. Thank you. First agenda item, we have with us tonight two individuals who will serve as our facilitators for our long-range planning work board members, so I wanted to introduce you to them. They might have a couple of things to tell us, not presenting, we're not really, it's not on the agenda as a presentation or a discussion item, but we have Dr. Mary Broderick, who holds a doctorate in education, a master's degree in business administration, and a Bachelor of Arts in English. She has worked with CAVE for a number of years as a consultant with its Superintendent Search Services and has worked in several different capacities as a facilitator and strategic planning consultant for over 25 years. Mary has also devoted many years to community service with many different boards and agencies. And we have Dr. Jack Reynolds, who holds a doctorate in education and degrees in educational administration and a Bachelor of Science in biology with minors in chemistry and philosophy. He has served in many different capacities in the public school realm, including teacher, principal, coordinator, and directorships and superintendencies, where he oversaw all aspects of district administration. So I welcome the two of you. We look forward to working with you. And if you, I think you have some assignments for us, maybe some homework.
We have some assignments.
Go right ahead.
Come to the podium. Great. We're really looking forward to the opportunity to work with each of you as you mold, with lots of community input, your plan for your schools for the next 10 years plus. And before we started that, we wanted to just come and introduce ourselves and say hello. And we do have an assignment for you, or two. Do you want to?
Sure.
Two?
Well, hello. We have referred to this, the meeting was referred to as a meet and greet. Where we were, it was a bump and run. And you had bump and runs, that's where your first night of negotiation with teachers, there's a bump and run. So if anyone, never mind. As Mary said, we wanted to meet. We wanted you, if the next meeting is a real work session, we thought tonight we better at least make friends before we say, okay, let's get to work. Okay.
So I had been approached about doing this consulting work with you, and I thought, well, I bring one dimension, I bring facilitation ability, but I had never seen anybody who is as brilliant at bringing the community along in building projects as Jack was. So that's why I said I think it would be really helpful to bring him into this as well. He's very strategic in thinking about whom you want to make sure you're talking with as you do things, and just engaging the community. So as we approach this work, we just promise you that we will bring honesty and transparency, and we are unbiased in this. We have no skin in the game here, and we'll definitely bring that. So we want to really support you in considering your long-range facilities plan and engaging the community as effectively as possible. So let me just preface the charge to you by saying that we had something we lived by when I was a board member and Jack was superintendent, and I ended up calling it Reynolds Rule. So I'm going to ask Jack to describe what Reynolds Rule was.
I'll give it a shot.
This is a preface to your assignment.
Thank you. I think, so I'm not sure you got to my role in the State Department of Ed in Massachusetts. I was in charge of innovative projects, and we awarded millions of dollars worth of grants. Feds required a needs assessment. Well, I remember looking out the window one day, and people are throwing rocks at kids in buses as they're trying to go to school. And I had to say to the department, the U.S. Department of Ed, You need a needs assessment, I'll take a picture out the window. We need data, we know what was needed or the problem. So it came home and enamors even more so maybe, that if you start with where you are or what's weak, you wind up generating opposition. If we say, let's close some school, let's transfer, God for help, redistrict, an entrenched people get against you. But if you say to people, let's dream about the ideal. Say there's no money problems in the world. We can back into reality. Instead of going from the back forward, let's go from the future back to where we are. So we really like to create a rule that instead of focusing on the weaknesses, let's focus on the future. What would Milford need, ideally, in 10 years, in 5 years, on the way out? But at least, let's think about that. So we wanted to give you an assignment, which seems a little pedantic, but we'll give you an assignment, and if you make vulgar gestures, so be it, what can I say? Our charge to you for our meeting on October 14th.
And we're gonna send these to you. We're gonna follow up this meeting. I think they'll come from Sue, because there are 3 pieces of information.
I'll send you them in writing. So that you have them.
On one piece of paper, letting any political or realistic barriers vanish, but given your mission, vision, commitments, and informed by your data gathering, please dream. Write down and bring to our meeting on the 14th your vision of the ideal facilities plan. Don't be restrained by limitations at this bit. Is that crazy? Is that too much?
Okay, so
If
you've
that
got,
gets out in the
I know
newspaper, you'll all be committed, but that's all right.
you've gotten tons of information. I know you're gonna have to reflect on a lot of that, but just really dream about what would be ideal. There are 2 other pieces of information that we wanna share with you, because as we were hearing what you've gathered so far, a couple of things came to mind, and I'm really enjoying ChatGPT, so I kind of looked up what is the average school life expectancy. So that's a piece of information that we have to share, and the other is the ideal school size. So those will be documents that'll be coming to you. The other 2 assignments for you, though, are for you to consider what else you're going to need to know in order to craft this plan. What information do you think you're still missing that is going to be a key piece for you to understand as you craft your plan? And then the next is for you to think about the information that you want to gather from your community. So, and maybe even how you want to engage your community, but what do you want to know from students, from staff, from parents, from alumni, from elected officials, and the general public? Okay, so those are 3 pieces that we want you to bring to the meeting on October 14th, and 2 pieces of information that are for your information that will be coming to you. All right, well, great. We haven't personally met everybody, but great to meet you this evening, and we look forward to our work together beginning on October 14th.
Very good. Yep. On the 14th, the hope is that we can bang out our business really quickly at the beginning of the meeting, and then we'll shift to a workshop mode and work for the rest of the time with Mary and Jack for that evening. And I think I had mentioned that you can expect to see this on many agendas in the months coming forward, and we'll try to do the same, as well as potentially some special meetings that will fit in when need be to get the work going. So with that, does anybody have any questions about the process itself at that point? And I'll follow up with the information that they just shared so that you have it in writing, the documents that they wanted to share with you. And I think the other piece is that as we go along, I think there's going to be lots of questions. We've talked about this as well. There'll be a frequently asked questions spot on the website. So as questions come up, because I anticipate that's going to happen throughout the process, you can, if you can't verbalize the question during a meeting, or if it comes up when you're at home, you can just jot them down and email them to me, and I'll compile a document with all the questions and share it periodically with administration so they can gather the information that we want. And at some point, Bureau Veritas will come back to talk with us.
And we have a spot on the website with all the documents that the board has and will have, so everything will be
Right.
available to the public. And it's a little tab right on the front page, facilities planning. Okay?
Okay. All right, well, thank you for
Wonderful.
coming down for this brief introduction tonight, and we'll see you on October 14th.
October 14th.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you, Mary, thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Board members, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the student achievement results. Dr. Taya?
Mr. Gualtieri,
Thank you, Dr.
he needs no intro.
Good evening, Ms. Glennon, members of the board. Fantastic to see you all this evening. Tonight we have for you our annual assessment update regarding our summative assessments, as well as some of the other measures that we keep within the district that we want to be able to share with you this evening. And you will notice in the audience are several members of the team that I want to make sure that I have the chance to introduce to you. So seated closest to me, I guess if you would say closest, Beth Morrow, who is our K-5 Supervisor of Humanities. Next to her is Melissa Akampora. She's our Instructional Supervisor of Equity Engagement. And next to her is Miss Therese, I just drew a blank. McGuire. Yes, Therese McGuire. I'm so used to calling her Tate. She is our Instructional Supervisor of Early Childhood. And then right next to her is Miss Lisa Swanson. She is our Secondary Supervisor of STEM. And then in front of her is Dr. Andrew Deacon. He's a new face to us. He is our Instructional Supervisor of Student Development and Academics. And then obviously we have a couple members, Dr. Christy Angoleski, who is not with us this evening, and Miss Sarah Brewer, who is also not with us this evening, who is our Secondary Supervisor of Humanities. So this fantastic team really has led a lot of the work that you're going to hear more about this evening. So as we get into this evening, I want to start first with getting into a little bit about where we are as a state coming into 2024. And I feel like even before my time in Milford, this was a traditional update that we gave to you coming out of the pandemic and thinking about student achievement. And we've had some gains across the state. So it's the second straight year that we've seen increases in our mathematics and science scores as a state. ELA has stayed largely static from last year to this year. And we're also starting to see chronic absenteeism numbers decrease across the state as well. However, you'll notice kind of the next snippet. If you go online and you do any Googling around Connecticut achievement, Connecticut performance, you're also going to notice that we still haven't made the recovery back to our pre-pandemic levels yet. So the work that we've continued to talk to you about the last couple of years, the work coming out of the pandemic, some of the issues we've seen around student performance are still really apparent and evident to the work that we do every day. So we're continuing to put those supports in place and think about our curriculum and the way that we approach our instruction with our students to help continue to close any of those learning gaps. As always, everything we do in Milford is grounded in our why. It comes back to our 4 key frameworks. And a lot of those are intentionally connected to the goals that were approved from the Board of Ed in support of the work that we do as a district. So we want all of these things to continue to drive the decisions that we make, whether it's budgetary or programming. So I'm going to start first with a little bit of an overview of 2 of the high stakes assessments that are given to our students annually. We will come back and talk about the science one later in the presentation this evening. But we have our SBA for literacy and numeracy, and this is given to students in grades 3 through 8. And then we also have our SAT, which is given in reading and writing as well as math to students in grade 11. We have an SAT school day that happens each spring. So I want to start first with a little bit specific around the SBA reporting. So there's a couple different levels of achievement that are provided to families after a student completes the SBA. First of all, every student receives what's called a scale score. And that's just based on points and questions that are correct on the assessment. That scale score actually translates to an achievement level, either a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if you look at both ends, 1 would be considered not meeting the benchmark, all the way up to a 4, which is that exceeding benchmark. The nice thing for us as educators is we also get additional details, and they break out what's called knowledge and skill. So we get this for both literacy and numeracy. If you're looking at literacy, we can look at reading, writing, listening, and they also have what's known as research and inquiry. And on the parent reports, the student reports that go home, they actually break out and give a little bit of a performance description for each of these knowledge areas. And what you'll see is if it has a blue check next to it, that symbolizes that the student performed above standard on that particular skill area. The equal means at or near, so they're kind of approaching that standard or have just reached that standard. And then the little, looks like the warning sign, the little triangle with the exclamation point in it, represents below standard. So we see that for literacy and numeracy. However, the skill base changes. So for math, we see things like concepts and procedures, problem solving and modeling, as well as communicating reasoning. And that's a consistent theme across all of the different content standards, whether it's ELA, whether it's math, whether it's science. That communicating reasoning, supporting with evidence, is a pretty consistent theme across all of the content areas. So I want to start first with just an overview of our performance, grades 3 through 8 and 11 for the SAT with literacy. So what you'll see is on this table, we've given you performance for our elementary students. And again, the reason you don't see K1 or 2 is, as we mentioned, the assessment starts in 3rd grade. And I've given you the last 4 years of assessment data. So you have the spring of 21 up through this recent administration, which is the spring of 24. And grades 3 and 4, we started to see some pretty good upticks in our performance for performance on the SBA and literacy. Grade 5 has stayed relatively flat. So that's an area for us that we want to continue to work on and look at is our performance in grade 5. As we move to the middle school level, you'll notice grades 6 and 8 had some rises in performance. Grade 8 being the most abundant, about a 7% increase for grade 8, and grade 7 had a slight decrease. SAT, when we talk about reading and writing, this is an assessment that for the last several years has stayed relatively flat for us. It's an opportunity for us this year to be able to start to dig into the actual domain scores and take a look at things like standard English conventions, information on ideas. So breaking down some of those assessment domains to take a look at what particular areas we're noticing some trends in. As you know, we are also a district that supports our world language growth and opportunities for students in the world languages. We did have students this year who graduated from either high school and have earned the seal by literacy. We had a total of 14 students that were in their senior year that had earned the seal. There were an additional 6 students for a total of 20 that met the requirements for the assessment. So as, if you remember, there's 2 components to the seal by literacy. The first one is that they have to pass all of their ELA classes for the 4 years of high school. And then they also have to meet a certain language threshold on a particular assessment. So we use things like the ALERA, the APPLE, and you can also use what's known as the AP exam. So the languages that we gave the seal to this year were Spanish, Latin, French, and for the first time ever, we actually had a student earn the seal by literacy in Turkish. So even if we don't offer the language, there are opportunities for students to earn that seal in a language that they are comfortable speaking. It may be a primary language or a language that they're learning on their own accord. So let's transition into mathematics. So I'm really proud of the work that our math team K-12 has done. This is an area that across the state, districts have struggled to see that rebound after the pandemic. Our team has really done some nice work over the last school year, starting to dig into math. If you take a look, for instance, grades 3 and 4 had some substantial increases in math achievement. And again, this is just looking at the snapshot of a single year. This doesn't account for growth. It's not looking at same students moving from one cohort to the next. This is just a one-year snapshot of performance. And then obviously, as we saw with literacy, that grade 5 is one that we want to continue to focus on and think about the work that we're doing there. Grades 6 and 8 also saw some tremendous growth. I'm really proud of the work that has been done in grade 8. If you take a look at that, that's gone from just after the pandemic, about 38% of students meeting or exceeding the benchmark to over 50%. So we're starting to see some really great growth, not only in our literacy work, but also in our math work across the district. The area that we want to continue to dig into, just as we saw with SAT literacy, is the SAT math. And there's opportunities here. Ms. Swanson is doing some incredible work with our teachers to begin to build out some of our curriculum for our advanced courses like pre-calculus and calculus. There's data that we can acquire from the SAT math in terms of passport to advanced math and heart of algebra that will give us some indication of performance in particular domains within the SAT math assessment that I'm hoping will help to shape not only our assessment work, but our curriculum work in district as well. So what I've shared with you so far is our achievement results, our annual, year-to-year, just a snapshot of a particular grade level. Well, several years ago, when the state released their own performance model, their accountability index, one of the things that district said was, achievement only tells us a yes or no. Where is a student, but it doesn't attribute to the growth that they've made over time. So Connecticut was actually really innovative in being one of the first states to introduce a growth model. And what I want to share with you is, as we get into the growth model, there's two elements to this growth model. And when we talk about the accountability index in the spring, when we come back to that next gen accountability, you'll hear me reference these two terms again. But there's two parameters that the state assesses for every student. The first one is what's known as the growth target. So if you take a look, what I've given you on this slide is I've given you 3 third grade students. And I've just called them student 1, student 2, and student 3. So let's think about last year in terms of 22-23. So we're actually going back kind of 2 years now, school year wise. Student takes the assessment in math as a third grader, and they earn this particular scale score. So you'll notice in the third column where it says 2022, 2023 scale score. That's the actual raw score that that student earned. What the state does is they have a metric to determine how much growth a student should make annually on the SBA. So they put out a predictor, they put out a number for each student. So you'll notice, for instance, student 1 had a scale score of 2275, and the state said, this student, if they're making growth, should make about 45 points of growth from grade 3 to grade 4. So let's fast forward a year now. Student 1 sits down to take the SBA as a 4th grader. And let's say now they earn a scale score of 2308, which in reality is only 33 points of growth. So they put the student's predicted score and actual score side by side, and they basically say yes or no. They go right down the roster for every kiddo. Yes, no, yes, yes, no. And at the end, they figure out what the percentage is of the kids who made the growth target. So they count up all the yeses and determine the percentage. And that's what they call the growth target. However, there's one more layer to this. So we've talked about whether a student has made the full range of their growth. District said, well, that's great. You've told me yes or no, the student's made growth or hasn't made their growth. But I want to know how much of that growth target was reached. So what the state did was they took it a layer further, and they actually told districts what percentage that each student met. If they didn't reach the target, they told us how much of that actual target was achieved. So per grade level, they can take all the third grade students and average them together and tell us, on average, how much of the target were our third graders able to achieve, our fourth graders, fifth graders, all the way up. So we do get two metrics for each student in terms of did they reach the growth target, yes or no, and then also how much of that target was achieved. So on this particular table, I've given you two kind of sections. I've provided you ELA, and I've also provided you math. So in the first column with the colors are the grade levels, and at the bottom I've given you the average. So this is if you took all of the scores in each column and averaged them together, this would be our kind of our district average. In the first column is the growth rate. So this is that yes or no. Did the student meet the growth target or not? And what you'll notice is the numbers that are in black are our current year, so spring of 2024, results for the percentage of students reaching that growth rate. In the parentheses, that is compared to the 2023 school year. So anywhere that you see a plus in green indicates that we went up by that many points from 23 to 24. Anywhere that you see the red in parentheses with a minus indicates that there was a decrease in either growth rates or the percent of the target which was achieved. So overall, again, just pulling some of the big ones out of here, if you look at grade 4, grade 3, grade 4 math, for instance, had 11% jump in the growth rate being achieved, 15% for the average target achieved, and even just looking at the district average trends, there's a large amount on here that represent significant growth of our students in reaching their growth targets. And for the students that didn't reach the growth targets, the amount of the growth that we're seeing in those kiddos. So I want to move on to science. So I mentioned to you we have the SBA and the SAT. There's also the NGSS assessment. And the NGSS assessment is only administered in 3 grades. Grade 5, grade 8, and grade 11. Same thing in terms of the achievement. Each student receives a scale score, which is then translated to an achievement level 1 through 4. And you'll notice that the test is 3-dimensional. Doesn't mean that it's 3-dimensional off the page. It's going to pop out the page on you. What it means is that there's 3 elements that go into creating the questions that are on the assessment. So if you think about it as cooking, you'll notice in the right kind of diagram, there's those 3 colors there. It assesses the practices that students use. So if you were to give that the analogy of cooking, that would be like baking, sauteing, broiling, frying. The cross-cutting concepts in green are considered some of the skills that students use across every area of science. So for cross-cutting concepts, think of that as the spices. You may use pepper, salt, sugar across a variety of dishes. And then lastly is the content. This is what you think of: matter, energy, adaptations, photosynthesis. So the content that students are learning. And this is kind of like the things that you're cooking, the vegetables, the protein. So all 3 of these things come together into one cohesive unit when they design the assessment questions. So it's looking no further at the fact that students cannot just answer a question, but they have to be able to apply that concept in a real, authentic manner to a graph, to a situation where they have to make population of something rise to see how something else responds. So when we look at NGSS assessment, This is an area for us that we want to continue to do some work around. Grade 8 is a grade that we have introduced a new curriculum over the last couple of years, and we've seen some pretty nice, consistent gradual growth for students in grade 8. Grade 11 is an area that I want to be able to dig a little bit further into and look at some of the connections between our elementary, middle, and high school content and skills, just to see the areas that we want to continue to improve for grade 11. Switching gears in terms of, we're going to talk about advanced placement and dual enrollment, two other indicators of the work that we do to support our students in district. AP, again, is the opportunity for students to be able to earn college credit while in high school. And a lot of these AP courses translate to post-secondary institutions. And we have about 25 AP courses that we currently offer in district across a variety of different academic disciplines. I'm really proud of the fact that if you take a look at since 2021, we've continued to gradually increase the percent of our students scoring a 3 or higher on advanced placement tests in the district. We've also seen a significant increase in the number of students that are enrolled in completing AP courses. So this really shows that our students are looking for opportunities to engage in some of that advanced rigorous coursework. And we have a lot of accolades to be proud of with our students. So in terms of our AP scholars, we had 85 AP scholars in district. And I just want to confirm my numbers. I think that was an increase of 18 from last year, yep. Increase of 18 students earning the AP Scholar designation from last year. We had 29 AP Scholars with honors. We had 60 AP Scholars with distinction, and that is 6 greater than last year. And then we had a total increase of about 34 students earning the Scholar distinction in all categories across the district. Also, a total of 5 students earned the AP Capstone Diploma as part of their work. So a lot of great accolades to be proud of for our students in AP. There's an important side to this too. We also have our dual enrollment. And we continue to look for opportunities to partner with post-secondary institutions. Some of the work that I've been working on with Ms. Swanson and Ms. Brewer is looking at Southern Connecticut State University and some of the dual enrollment courses that they offer there. We currently have partnerships with UConn and Housatonic for several courses. And we're really proud of, between all of our high schools, the number of students that are completing our ECE courses. And everything from US history, chemistry. We also have the If You Love It, Teach It, which saw a significant jump in the number of students completing that course. I think we were single digit last year, and we had almost 20 students this year completing that course. So again, we're seeing the same trends with ECE as we're seeing with AP. So we're excited that our students continue to take advantage of the course opportunities that are provided to them. And some of the work that we're continuing to do this year is expand additional coursework, taking a look at some of the courses that we already offer and looking for ways to build in that dual enrollment opportunity so they can earn credit while in high school. We also have CT career clusters. Ms. Swanson's work has been countless here in terms of the way she's partnered with our teachers and outside organizations. We have an industry collaboration board, which is comprised of business professionals and teachers. We actually just added this year a member from the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce, who's come on and been a great partner to supporting the work that we're doing to make sure kids have the resources from the community. And from our 11 CTE career clusters, which are mirrored at the state level, we have currently 5 career pathways, which we've shared with you in a prior presentation, and we're continuing to, part of the long-range plan work that we share with you at a prior board meeting, is to continue to expand that work out over the next 5 years. In terms of our students, we continue to outperform the state in terms of our graduation percentage, students graduating in 4 years from high school. This year we had 82 students graduate with distinction, and that is reflective of the fact that students have the community service requirement, number of hours that need to be completed to get that distinction. And then we had 160 students graduate with honors, and you can see the variety of levels of the honors on the slide. One thing that I think sets Milford apart is the fact that we let students curate the path that they want to go after high school. So we encourage students to look at 2-year schools, 4-year schools, apprenticeships, even going into the workforce of the military. And for me, this is great to be able to see that there is a significant chunk of the pie wheel here that has a variety of opportunities for kids to engage in. So we continue to, as part of our work around the vision of the learner, encourage students to find what they love to do, personally and professionally, and build their academic programming to fit those needs. We also are very proud of not only the awards that our students are earning, but we also have several students attend a variety of prestigious colleges and universities, not just in the Northeast, but throughout the country, of which many are pictured on the slide in front of you. And we also recognize the fact that we are a district and a community that recognizes and supports the fine and performing arts, whether it's our drama productions, our music performances, or even our district-wide art show. So we had a total of 10 students at the middle school level that attended regionals this year. 46 students attended high school regionals, and a total of 15 students attended the high school All-State, or were named to high school All-State. So we continue to have a substantial amount of students that are earning awards and honors across our music programming. And that's a thank you to you for supporting our programming and the resources that we need to offer those courses. So thank you for that. As you know, we were recognized at one of the Board of Aldermen meetings for the 4th consecutive year. We have been a best community for music education. It's an honor that we're incredibly proud of, and we hope continues into the future. And I think that's a piece that ties into our community supporting our work, as well as our Board of Education and our administration and staff. Several students earned a variety of awards in the visual arts, including AP Studio Art. We had scholarships given by the Milford Arts Council. We had students receiving recognition at the SEC Art Show as well as the MAC Art Show. And students are pursuing the careers in the arts as well as holding their own gallery openings. So we have a variety of students that are taking their work in art in terms of the visual arts, much further than just the courses that are in our classrooms. So I'm not going to walk through what we've tried to do for you is give you a variety of the goals that we're continuing to work on throughout this year in alignment to the data and some of the metrics that we've shared with you tonight. So I'll highlight a few on each slide. Literacy and ELA. Obviously, the big piece for our elementary program is continuing to look at our professional learning, as well as our pilot and implementation of a reading program that is aligned to the science of reading, thinking about our curriculum for early literacy. We've also done a lot of work at the secondary level to think about the choice and increasing reading and writing volume for students at the middle and high school levels. And that has gone incredibly well. It was very successful. The teachers have responded very well and have really enjoyed the opportunity to think about their curriculum in a different way. Social studies, we again continue to think about revising our curriculum to meet the C3 as well as the Connecticut K-12 social studies framework. And we have some exciting things coming up in the near future that I will share with you at a later time. And then world language, this year, as you know, we currently have middle school American Sign Language that's launched. And again, we continue to look at our curriculum guides and our program maps to think about the way that we can support language acquisition. In the STEM, I mentioned to you a little while ago that Ms. Swanson has done incredible work to support our team through developing common assessments at the middle school level and continuing that work up to the high school. There's also been a push to continue to develop curriculum, especially in some of our advanced math courses like pre-calc, statistics, and calculus. And Mr. Wakeman, who is our interim K-5 STEM supervisor, is working with our coaching team as well as our math teachers to think about our learning progressions as well as our assessment work at the elementary level for our math program there. And then same thing in terms of the STEM lab. We're continuing to think about the connections to those science and engineering practices to support the skill acquisition as students engage in the content within the STEM labs. Ms. McGuire, see, I got your last name this time, has done fantastic work at supporting the development of our intentional play units, both at the pre-K level as well as the kindergarten level. We have launched those and are, for the first time, have that common experience for all of our kids across the grade levels. We've also looked at the ability to talk about our SEL work using the Little Spots curriculum, and Ms. McGuire did a bunch of different programs this year, and even going into this, or last year going into this year, using the Little Spots program with our families. And she has taken a really strong approach at looking at family engagement, using the Sparkler app as a tool to be able to engage our families in the learning at the early childhood level. And she continuously works very hard with all of our supervisors at the elementary level to build some of those cross-disciplinary partnerships in math and in literacy. Obviously, this is an area that we have spent a lot of time talking to you about through a variety of instructional highlights and meetings. We continue to think about new curriculum in the areas like tech ed at the middle school, our allied health coursework, and eventually building towards our culinary arts. And we're always looking at ways to expand our industry certifications to give students the opportunity through their coursework to earn certifications that they can then take into the job market or even an apprenticeship once they leave high school. The media and fine and visual arts, again, a lot of the work is focused on professional learning for our art and music staff, as well as opportunities to implement teaching artistic behaviors, which takes on kind of the self-directed, personalized learning approach to art, where students have the opportunity to experience the creation and the inquiry as part of the work that they're doing in the art courses. And our student development and wellness, again, looking at health and PE, a lot of curriculum work to align our curriculum and our curriculum maps to the Healthy Balanced Living curriculum framework, which really defines out clearly our health and physical education standards. And then lastly, our social emotional learning. We have a SEL guiding coalition that has done a lot of work at building programs and supports for SEL throughout the district. That's work that Dr. Deacon is continuing to lead this year. And we're excited. We are very close to a launch of our new revised high school advisory program, which has connections to our vision of the learner and dispositions for students to reflect on from their coursework and their classes. And this will ultimately lead up to the experiences that students have in the senior year, whether that's capstone, internship, or even we have an opportunity for students to tie in things that they're doing in the community. So if you are in a youth leadership program, or the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, and you're doing an Eagle project or other type of community action project, you're able to apply that in as part of that program. You know that one of the areas that Dr. Katai and I have spent time really sharing with you is, while the high stakes summative assessments are important, they're only one lens to the work that we're doing in the district. And we really want to make sure that when we talk about assessment with all of you, and we use it as a lens to guide our programming and our curriculum development, that we're really encompassing a whole variety of different areas. So you'll notice across the top are really our standardized measures, our high stakes assessments. There's also other elements. what we see for our student accolades in the fine arts, the work that we're doing to support college and career pathways, our student success planning to make sure that students have the skills necessary to go out and be productive in the community and in society. And then we also continue to emphasize our own homegrown Milford Measures work, which looks at some of the qualitative and quantitative measures that we're seeing in our classrooms, how our educators and students are engaging with the curriculum. So as we wrap up tonight, just keep in mind that these are all really essential elements to the work that we're doing, and these are all pieces that we continue to monitor and use to inform the decisions that we make for our students each and every day. So with that, thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
A lot to digest here. Questions from board members? Mr. Smith?
Yeah, just thank you.
Yeah.
It certainly is a lot, and digesting it is what I'll be doing tonight and for the next few days. And
Yeah.
curious if the next time there's something like this, the charts and graphs were awesome. One of the things that I now have my homework in to kind of make sure I'm calibrating my understanding appropriately is comparing it to, like, I appreciate having the different the different years in it.
Yeah.
It'd be great to have the state average, so understanding where we rank relative to the state, and then certainly it's, I'm guessing it would be hard to, at this level, figure out what analogous communities are, but that's probably one of the things I'll be going home and doing research on, because it's, obviously every community is different level of resources and challenges, and so to understand how successful we are, I'd like to calibrate it with
Yeah,
what the
so
state average is and what.
for the state side, we can definitely provide to you state averages. It is not, and this is work that they've shown over the years, is that the third comparisons
Mhm.
are no longer considered reliable. And the state has actually come out and said that it's not a beneficial practice to engage in comparing across communities, just because some of those metrics are not as reliable as they once were intended to be. So we try not to position ourselves against other communities. We're really focused on what we're doing here in Milford. So.
Yeah, as a board, that's something that's been a practice of the board for many, many years. And interestingly, I attended a CAVE webinar on the state assessment data with Ajit. I can never say his last name. He's been around for a long time.
Gallipur Krishnan.
He's the state data officer for the state. And he's come down to Milford in the past to do some work with us, but he did mention what you had just said, that the state actually does not recommend that districts compare themselves with those cut scores, and that the DIRG had not been updated since 2006, so it's very, very old.
Yeah.
And they really do focus on the growth. What he said was, are you consistently growing kids year after year? And I think I was pleased to see the growth piece, those increases. So as far as comparing other districts, it's not something that we've done, but you can go
Yeah.
and do the work yourself if you
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Irby?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the state averages, I think that's important for the NGSS one in particular.
Sure.
Because when you're looking at the grade 11 numbers, it looks a little low. But I think for the NGSS, it's a difficult test because it's not like the SAT. You're not using that score to apply to colleges. The students, I think, that are really focusing on that test are your scientists, are those types of students. And then you have the 11th and 12th graders who kind of know they're not going to use science, so they might not be focusing on this one so much. So I think it's a harder test and needs like more of a story in it by the time you get to the 11th grade. The 5th and the 8th, those are still your students and they're still in school. But by the time you get to the 11th, that's a harder grade to kind of truly get an assessment, of course. So state averages probably be helpful there.
Thank you, Ms. Irby. I appreciate that.
You're a science teacher, right?
I'm a science teacher. I got to have those students.
Ms. Preet?
Remind me again, when did these come out for your review and discussion, the
So they start to come out in unofficial form for districts in usually late June, early July.
Okay.
They're embargoed until, I think this year was early September, late August before they were officially allowed to go out publicly. So the state will tell us the date that they're going to release them to communities because they want them to all go out at the same time.
Okay. Grade 5 ELA and math. So they came in, so now they're in middle school, and obviously it's gonna get more rigorous.
Mhm.
So on ELA, it went from 59 down to a 56, meeting or exceeding, and then math, 46 down to a 44. Was there adjustments, conversations with the middle school teachers about, okay, what do we need to do? Because if they're coming in on a possible slide, what now do we have to do to build them back up?
Yeah.
So it's gonna get harder, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at, the
Yeah.
5th grade, going into middle school.
Yeah.
Preparing them, making sure that they get back on track or whatever it may be.
That's a great question, Ms. Preet. So I've talked with Ms. Swanson and Mr. Wakeman. During some of our time this year, we want to dig into a little bit of what we're seeing for our middle schoolers. Lisa has the perspective of that 612 in terms of skills and content that she's hearing from her teachers. Being able to get in the room and have the conversation across the upper elementary grades, 4th and 5th grade to 6th and 7th, and looking at some of the data and talking about that transition between elementary and middle school
Yeah.
in terms of not only the curriculum, but also the skill, the math practices as well. So that's some of the conversation early on in the year that we're
Yeah.
continuing to have, and both supervisors have been doing work around learning progressions and starting to dig into the assessments as they build them out. So we're gonna continue to have more and more data, more and more opportunities to connect as a team, but then with our classroom educators to be able to support the work. So I thank you very much for bringing that up.
Yeah, because grade 5's different than grades, you're gonna get to middle school, you're changing classes, right? I wanna be sure that they're getting that focus to make sure they kind of
That was a key,
upswing.
that was a key COVID cohort as well.
Okay,
I look at it with that lens. Those 5th graders you're talking about had their 1st grade year disrupted
okay.
by COVID. And so when you look at, they're the ones that are flat.
Mm.
The ones who had kindergarten disrupted, who were your examples and the others here, and I'm very familiar with that cohort, but they had kindergarten disrupted, they've jumped up.
Mm.
Their numbers have gone up in a way that the 5th graders haven't. So that's very encouraging to whomever has been grabbing those kindergartners and teaching them math really well to help them do that. And the same with the ELA, but that's a lens to put across particularly these numbers, because these were our kindergartners and our 1st graders. Our preschoolers are the ones who shot up to that 60 in grade 3, so they weren't in school yet, pre-COVID. So that's an interesting layer to it that I assume is being accounted for in all of the, what do we do to help them along the way, because they have such unique challenges at the point in which their learning curve was disrupted. And it reflects in some of the 11th grade numbers that you see as well, that they were there and then they dropped out when you see the COVID disruption where they didn't have their high school science foundations built the way everyone did previously.
And Mr. O'Terry, some of your professional learning systems address the
Yes.
concerns that Ms. Preet is expressing, that we're sitting down with teachers have time around data, around curriculum, and revisiting what we're doing with our young people.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dr. Patel.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Petrosky?
So at one point you did mention, excuse me, that the change in curriculum and the curriculum being implemented after a couple of years was showing some really positive impact. And I was wondering if that was fairly consistent throughout all of the testing, or was it just spotty?
I mean, you saw that there was across literacy, numeracy. I think of the work in the last year or so that Ms. Morrow has done with our kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade teachers in the various subsets of early literacy, whether it's phonics, phonemic awareness, and even fluency. We're starting to see that on some of our local assessments, major jumps. Our 1st grade teachers raved about the work that our kindergarten teachers did last year and how prepared students were coming in for reading and things like that this year. So same thing with math. We continue to see our kids coming in stronger, and our supervisors are consistently working with teachers to revise curriculum, look at assessment data. It's just something that they're naturally always talking about. We have a truly inquisitive team that's always diving into the work with teachers. And I feel like one of the pieces about this group that never burns out is the fact that they are never satisfied with where they're at. They're always trying to reach that next step. So I think the work will always continue, and I'm excited about, obviously the foundation we set last year as a team and the work that we're going to do this year to build upon that. So the work is never done for us. And I mean, you can see we've got some bright spots within our data. We have areas that we want to continue to grow, but that's what you're looking for, is just that next stage to push yourself forward, so.
Okay, I guess a little bit of a follow-up to that as well is, I was wondering, and I'm going to say it's probably just anecdotal, but the dovetail with the professional learning and the curriculum changes, are being supported by the professional learning. Are you finding that the increase in professional learning is having a positive impact?
So, I think last year, obviously, the variety of professional learning opportunities that staff had, we saw some of the changes this year in our performance. I think one of the things that we're going to hope to see this year is the coherence piece, that now there's some of the connections to the work that we're doing with HQI and supporting those instructional strategies, but then being able to have allocated time during PL for staff to dig in and look at data together in common groups, cross grade levels. Even in some cases, there may even be a piece that eventually we get to a school-wide data point that folks want to be able to look at. So I think there's opportunities. Our teacher support network, which is one element of that, has launched incredibly well. Teachers are doing work around the science of reading. They're getting together with their pilot teachers and talking about practice. So I think the coherence and the connectivity of our professional learning model is only going to continue to support the growth.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So when I looked at this, looking at the grade 3 and 4 results, what it told me was that our foundational skills, our foundational work is starting to kick in a little bit.
I would agree with you there.
And then, looking at 5 and 11, what we talked about earlier certainly is, could be a part of that, but clearly there's some work to do there. So you have some very specific intentions in terms of
Yes.
what you'll be doing with those two
Yep.
types of kids.
And I think the impact of the science of reading being implemented, we're gonna see in a couple of years a real impact there, so.
I think you mentioned with the SAT was newly designed, did you?
So they've made some changes to it in just terms of it going from what they used to call like ERW to just reading and writing now. And they've even changed some of the subtests. They went to 8 domains. They used to have kind of sub-skills, and then they had subsection scores. They've changed kind of the reporting format and the way that they're scoring
So it's more internal than content?
No, the families get all of the information in terms of the score reports.
No, I mean in terms of the content, what they're being tested on. I know in the past there's been, they make changes to the tests over the years, and sometimes you see a dip because there's been a change in the way the content that the kids are being tested on that might not yet be aligned to the work in the district.
I'm not aware, I couldn't say with 100% certainty of any big content shifts. I believe structure-wise it's still the same.
And the other question I had, so in terms of the scores, the district scores, they're really averages, correct, of all the kids put
Yes.
together? So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other, Mr. Kovak?
In the Connecticut growth model,
Yes.
there's that number of the target growth that the state assigns for each student. That's kind of critical in calculating the overall performance metric. Do we have insight into how they come up with that number? Is there an algorithm or?
So they give some information if you were to go.
Is it a secret code somewhere?
It's top secret.
There is some, I think there is some proprietary nature to some of the information they use, but if you were really interested in digging into it, you wanted some like Thursday night, Saturday night reading, just bored around the house and you were looking for something, on the State Department's website, they do put out interpretation of score guides for all the content areas. And they do walk through, especially if you look for the next generation accountability, they break down each indicator and they tell you precisely the metrics and the multipliers for how those items are calculated.
Thank you.
So
Thanks.
they do share some of that in there, Mr. Kova.
I do want to say, Mr. Altieri, you explained that in a very concise manner that was very clear to me for the first time in a long time, so. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Ms. Muller?
On that, to that question, the scoring interpretation breakdown, I know can get very complex, having seen a bunch of those sheets come home in the mail, and it's one number and like 3 pages of how to understand that number. But just to clarify, I had a similar question to Mr. Kova as well, of the specific growth target for each student. Is that something that is made available to parents? Because what you explained was how they calculate all these other numbers and all these other metrics that they're using to go into that formula to get those
Yeah.
percentages and growth.
I'd have to look at the
Numbers.
score report.
But the actual individual growth targets, is that black box explained somewhere?
I will get an answer to you for that. I don't want to say yes or no because I'm not certain. I don't know if that's on the score report itself that goes home to families. I can look tomorrow and then I'll,
I'm sure I've got one sitting in the
Yeah.
mail I haven't opened yet.
Mr.
but-
Altieri, when do those go home?
next week they start going.
Yeah, so say they haven't
You'll
yet,
know
I can tell
soon?
you that, yes. We'll find out soon.
I will,
but the-
I will look into it and I will
Okay.
let Dr. Kataya know so I can go on the board update for the week.
Okay,
Just
great,
I'll
because that's
provide a clarification.
that was a very specific variable in this whole mix that has been a bit opaque.
I know they
Completely.
show,
Okay.
so if you're
Okay.
looking at the colored score report, they do
Yep.
show the scale score.
Yep,
And then they provide kind of like it's like a little bar graph and it's segmented and they show
it's very weird.
like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they show where the scale score is.
Mm-hmm,
But I don't know if on there they tell you that, student A needs to make 37 points of growth next year. I don't
right.
believe that.
Or
that
we
may be
thought
on
you
there.
would get to this, but,
They provide that to us
Yeah,
internally. We
okay.
get those metrics for planning through Connecticut Ed Site, which is the larger state data repository.
Okay, okay, that's helpful. And then 2 other questions. One, all this data, to follow up a little bit on Ms. Glennon's question about the averages across the district, is this data available school by school?
So the data school by school, there probably is some of the more holistic numbers on Ed Site. So if you go to Connecticut Ed Site, you are able to look,
Okay.
you can search district, but then they also break it down by school. You can also look grade levels or all grade levels combined.
Okay.
So they do provide a couple different parameters that you can use to narrow your search.
Okay, great, that's helpful. Off the numbers just a little bit, onto the priority areas. There were 2 separate bullets on here I'd seen that had to do with developing assessments around both the K-5 and then the middle school as well. I know that's been a concern that we've heard anecdotally from families for a while, that there aren't very regular, consistent assessments often of kids at certain units and certain, did you get this concept before we moved on to the next? I don't know, we don't measure that, we just move on. How do we know, that kind of thing? What kind of timelines do we have around these assessments, and what are they, this feels like it's a whole separate board content conversation at another time, and I don't mean to take us into a whole
Yeah,
separate
so
thing.
I
but
do want to clarify.
What can we do about some of these assessments?
Yeah, in terms of elementary, we did release a internal assessment calendar this year,
Okay,
which classifies a lot of our universal screeners in the area of literacy and mathematics, along with cut scores, benchmark scores,
Okay.
as well as dates that we would collect the data and have it put into our internal data
Okay.
dashboard. So that is brand new this year, and that has been shared with our educators. So we've looked at
okay,
across all the varieties of early literacy. We have assessments in all those areas, as well as our math. I think some of the ones that we were talking about tonight in terms of middle school, Mrs. Swanson, those are more curriculum-based assessments that are within the courses, end of units,
okay.
performance tasks.
Yeah.
Lisa, if you want to share anything specific.
Basically just said it right there.
That sounded
I mean,
pretty comprehensive.
making sure that at the end of each unit in math, we're all giving the same assessment
Yes.
in all our classrooms, and we're
Right.
all using the same scoring rubric
Mhm.
to ensure that we're giving the same feedback across the district, but they're in first-time implementation. So that means we
Okay.
were gonna spend some time looking at those
coming in, just, grab 3, please bring them and let's look at them. Are we calibrated as teachers as to what quality is and making, just working on our calibration across all of our staff.
Okay, so the unit assessments are new now, that are being implemented now.
The fact that they're all giving the exact same
Right,
one is
the
new. They've
coherence,
been
yeah.
giving unit assessments, but it was like the 2 8th grade teachers at one school and the 2 8th grade, sometimes they may have been communicating, but we
Right.
are assured in this year that they are all giving them. And that's part of our curriculum process, that's the phase we're in. So we wrote curriculum, we wrote the units, we adjusted the units, and now we're ready to really be at the common assessment point. And they've basically been giving some assessments, and those are the people who created the assessment. So it's
Okay.
kind of feedback of, we've kind of been piloting some of these and, which ones work, which ones don't, what takes too long, there's so many factors into
Right.
quality assessment.
Okay, no, that's great. And the common assessment, the common unit assessments, that's a piece of the K-5 as well, that's being developed?
Yes,
Okay,
we are in the process now of
that
looking at,
phase.
yeah,
Okay.
so our curriculum work, and aligned to that is our assessment work as well.
Okay,
In terms of looking
great.
at, the assessments that we're giving, not just our bigger screening assessments, but also some of the assessments that are happening in between.
Mhm.
And that, I'm hoping this year is a piece that as we dig into some of that collaborative data planning time with teachers, we're digging in and looking at those kind of in-between assessments as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Interestingly,
we
one
have, sorry.
one of the things that Ajit said at this webinar is that use of discretionary commercial benchmark standard assessments can muddle the data. So we are really
In-house.
homegrown.
For the most part.
Mhm.
We have
Right.
a couple that might be required by the state in the area of literacy.
Yeah, he did mention that the state does have theirs that, the districts can rely on.
Yeah, we do use the DIBELS, which is one of the
Mhm.
assessments in early literacy that's recognized by the state.
And Ms. Mahler, Mr. Altieri and I recorded a video for elementary parents that will be released next week that actually is on the topic of assessment data and the academic support and acceleration time block for children. So we're planning to do little mini videos to update parents on some of these things. So that's the topic of the first one that's going out next week.
Perfect timing, I had no idea, can't wait.
Any other questions on the assessment report? Ms. Doyle?
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for a comprehensive presentation. I mean, you've already taken it down, so you don't need to open them again or talk about it. But even within the data we have here, there is the ability to see how the classes track moving forward. I mean, if we look at grade 5 in spring of 2021, we're at 43%. And if we come to, which would be grade 7 in spring of 2023, they're at 54%. So you can see the growth, and it's hard to remove the layer of COVID that is part of this, but I think it comes back to what we've been doing and what you've been really working on, the consistency across the schools, the curriculum, the HQI, and bringing those home. And it doesn't seem unusual for there to be a dip in 5th grade. Is there concepts that are happening in 5th grade that are just more difficult than 4th grade? I mean, I'm pulling back to awful fractions in 4th grade. So,
You gave Ms. Swanson our help.
it's funny how now I think in fractions, but I didn't in 4th grade.
Fractions house, you're okay.
So typically, the 3rd to 4th grade transition is where a lot of the curriculum shifts happen for both literacy and numeracy. So I would not be surprised if that was true, that when that 3rd to 4th grade shift, and 4th and 5th, obviously, the content, the skill, what students are applying and utilizing to solve problems becomes more difficult. So I would think there's a bit of truth to that.
Okay, and then back to Ms. Irby's question, because I thought about this as well, is I'm thinking about 11th grade science, and the concepts of physics and biology and chemistry are just very different types of classes and the types of questions you're going to be taking. Can you just, I know that I'm putting you on the spot here,
No.
but can you give an idea of what a 11th grade question is? Because if you've never taken physics, the idea that you're going to understand that is
Like
unlikely.
a sample test
Yeah,
question?
like kind of what, not even what the sample test question is, but like the structure of how these questions are set out.
Yeah.
Because the next gen test has always been one of these different from all the other tests
Right.
of, hey, I know we're moving more in a model of, can you respond and open-ended versus.
So without putting you to sleep, when you talk about the connections to earth and space science, physical science on the high school NGSS, a lot of them deal with planetary science. It seems to be a common theme, so they'll give students like Kepler's laws are one of the things that dictate planetary motion, is one of the big concepts that happens in high school science. And they will give students different size ellipticals of planets, revolving around another body, whether it's another planet, a moon, and they'll ask students to calculate, or they'll give students like an eccentricity, what the shape of that orbit is. And then they will provide like a third one that doesn't have it and ask students to speculate based on what they saw the trends with the first couple to be. So students have to kind of know something about when you go more circle to more oval or elongated, what that does to, so there's some application, but it's trying to get students to think about modeling, developing a model, using the problem solving to get to a point where they can solve some of those questions. So that's the types of things that they see. They'll get a graph, and they'll have to talk about the relationship between two variables along the graph.
Okay, the graph question's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So complicated.
Yes.
Which I think to Ms. Irby's point is helpful to have
She's
that
saying no,
context.
it's not.
It is, but it isn't.
Ms. Irby, how'd I do there with planetary motion? Did I?
That was really good.
All right. A plus to the night.
A plus, Ms. Altieri.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
That was a great dialogue, board. Thank you so much.
Now we move on to the last agenda item.
You want us to take it?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon and board members. Before you, believe it or not, are the 25-26 budget priorities and assumptions. It is a first read. This is meant for the board's review and feedback and revision, of course, as they will become your budget priorities and assumptions. These are for your consideration this evening. The manner in which we'll go do this is I'll review the budget priorities, and Mr. Brennan will review the assumptions with you. And we're happy to take questions at the.
Do we have any printouts by any chance? I know that's like a Pam specialty. Did I miss a stack that I just didn't see? I did. I was even looking for that stack when I sat down. I apologize, I didn't see it. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Is there anybody else?
Okay. So we'll start with the budget priorities. I will preface it by saying that our priorities year after year are aligned with the board's goals and commitments, as well as the district's work based on the vision of the learner, high-quality instructional model, the developmental relationships framework, and the equity framework, four key documents that we repeatedly revisit and align all of our work to. The first primary area of priority is, of course, that of developing the core instructional program for the district across 491 classrooms. Primarily, we'll be focusing on the continued development and implementation of curriculum and high-quality assessments. We do have a curriculum revisions calendar that we follow that is revisited year after year and lays out 7 years of curriculum research, review, implementation, data collection, and then full implementation. Next year will be a big literacy curriculum implementation year as we align our efforts with the state mandated Right to Read Act. We're currently in a pilot and we'll be making a decision on what resources will be committed to, and that budgetary impact will land in the 25-26 school year. Additionally, we will be investing in elementary texts that reflect interdisciplinary learning in science and social studies. We believe that that is a healthy way at the elementary level to learn, so we'll continue to build the classroom libraries. We are also interested in expanding and diversifying our world language opportunities, particularly based on what we know students want and what labor market trends are. And that is highly informed by our full implementation pre-K through 12 in world language, which will cause us to make some decisions in the future on what do we do at pivotal points like 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th and 8th and beyond, based on the strength of the program at the elementary. Speaking of assessments, we're interested in developing a full suite of assessments, particularly in the K-12 mathematics program. As Ms. Swanson was saying, that we are looking for coherence and alignment across those assessments. So we look forward to continuing to put some effort into that in the upcoming school year. We want to invest in additional high school math electives. I think this is a direct response to the data analysis that we saw just talked about a few minutes ago. In the area of mathematics student achievement, we believe strengthening that achievement could be linked to diversifying more mathematics electives for our high schoolers. We will continue to look at and modify school schedules. We're hoping to expand the use of our technological tools, particularly the use of AI in the future. We'd like to continue to focus on voice and choice at the middle school by exploring and expanding middle school course offerings. We have a lot of work to do in science curriculum, and therefore we'll be strengthening through revision of the K-8 curriculum in science. We will always have our eyes on developing and expanding our career pathways and dual enrollment coursework. We will continue to develop and invest in the long-range musical instrument replacement and expansion plan. We will consider new learning opportunities for those students who attend the academy with a goal of increasing enrollment there, but also increasing programming at the academy. We will invest in special education programs with a particular attention placed on social, emotional, behavioral, and academic outcomes, and continue in general to support student assessment systems and opportunities for educators to conduct data analysis to inform instructional practice. The second primary area of priority would be that of enhancing the wellness and development of all students and staff. In this area, we hope to expand upon mental health supports in our schools to build on what we already have. We hope to build a comprehensive multi-tiered system of support throughout the district, which has already started. We're just going to continue to strengthen that. And also pilot some thinking and programming in the area of school-wide enrichment models at the elementary level. We've done our research and have done some modeling of that, but we're hoping to pilot some of that in the upcoming year. We want to continue to infuse opportunities for during the student day for academic support and acceleration, particularly through an ASA model, or otherwise known as academic support and acceleration. And we really have big dreams for summer learning programming. It's been on our multi-year plan to revision what summer school could look like. So we're hoping to get to that in the 25-26 school year. Our third area of primary focus for the 25-26 budget would be that of ongoing professional learning. In particular, implementing the educator learning system that Ms. Altieri has reviewed with you already this year. Continuing to strengthen our teachers' knowledge and skill set in the area of reading and writing, and particularly as aligned to the new resources that we will be investing in. Continuing to prioritize high-quality instructional practices in all our classrooms. Focusing on providing professional learning through student-centered instructional coaching. We're hoping to invest in some research and development in building models of professional learning during the school day at the secondary level, with a focus on building teacher capacity around new curriculum and assessments. And finally, giving educators more opportunities to strengthen their knowledge in equity and inclusivity in classrooms. The fourth area of priority would be that of expanding our talent management and development department and the supports we provide all of our educators, including that of implementing the new increasing educator diversity plan across the system, as well as implementing the new professional growth and learning plan aimed at connecting educator professional learning to student learning outcomes. We maintain a priority in maintaining effective class size as identified there. Grades K2 maximum of 20 and grades 3-5 maximum of 23. We would like to continue to invest in physical learning spaces, in particular those of tech ed that allow for career and industry aligned experiences, as well as understanding that there may be an impact of these current studies in the district-wide investment in upgrading our facilities through long-term planning. And that's just a real big question mark as to we don't know what will come out of this plan that the board develops. And finally, our priority is to continue to invest in student extracurricular activities and athletics. That's all for the area of priorities, Ms. Glennon.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya. Do we have questions or discussion points from board members?
Good question.
Yes, Ms. Irby?
For the summer school modification, is that all grades from elementary up through high school?
We'd like to, but we understand that might be a big bite of the elephant. So our dream is to modify all those levels. Right now we have a lot of programming that has been around a while, and we're not sure it's exactly responsive to where our students are now. So, you know, all things just have a season, right? We've been wanting to get to this for a few years, and I think Mr. Altieri and Ms. Stewart are chomping at the bits to get to it. So if it's not the summer of 25, it will most certainly be summer of 26. Take it easy. I know. He gave me the look, like, what? So we hope to impact all of those grades, but we're not sure we'll be able to do it all in one swoop.
You want
to add to that?
I was just going to say, I think to your question, Ms. Irby, we're looking at a K-8 in terms of Ms. Stewart and I have already had an initial meeting with the team just to start talking about some of the planning logistics, and I think we're focused on the K-8 piece right now. The high school typically has that credit recovery portion to it, so that's just the initial planning.
So just to clarify, is this summer school for additional supports for student, or is it enrichment type of summer school?
Yes and yes. Right?
Both?
Yes and yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Doyle?
What are we required to do for summer enrollment, or for summer classes? We have to do credit recovery and then other supports for students? What is typically, what students usually go into summer school?
So required is ESY is one of the elements for our students that have that as part of their IEP. And that's, I mean, that's really the component. The rest is things that districts are able to choose and offer to students, so.
Okay, and then I have a couple other questions. Can you, you mentioned, Dr. Kutaya, increasing enrollment in the academy. What logistically, what does that mean? Where are their students specifically? Are they moving from programs externally? Which students are, I don't want to say targeted to the academy, but like you're saying increase enrollment?
So we're currently experiencing fewer students at the academy than usual, and we believe that we need to establish an appropriate process and pipeline for those students who would be more successful in a smaller setting to consider the academy as an option.
Okay.
We have a lot of young people in crisis, and we believe that setting the academy up in a way that could give them a release and experience some success so that they can complete high school or recover and then go back to their comprehensive high school. But we know that the programming at the academy, like our summer school, has followed a more traditional alternative high school path. But Mr. Altieri, Ms. Stewart, and Ms. Marshall, our new principal there, who's been with us a few months, have other plans. So we're going to give them an R&D year We're gonna go visit other programs in the state that are demonstrating some success. So it does go a little bit hand in hand with the mental health needs of our young people and what they're experiencing. And the question that we have is, would a smaller school setting provide them more success? Hence, also, when you get to this report, when it's given to you, some of what we hope for the academy is actually expand that footprint or acquire other building space so that we can expand programming there. Because what they don't have is some of these opportunities that foreign in-law have, so.
You said traditional alternative high school pathway. Can you just give a framework of what that is, if there is one, or just like the
Basically, get enough credits to graduate.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
You know, either slow things down or compact it so that they can earn the credit to graduate.
And so you're trying to give, so if I heard you correctly, the goal is to give these students opportunities where they can thrive, like at law and foreign, where the students who may not be scientifically inclined might have a music or art program where they can be successful.
Right, and I think for a long time, there's been this type of kid that goes to the academy, and I think we're seeing that that probably doesn't fit anymore. That there are a lot of young people that could just go to a smaller setting and be more successful there. So we're trying to break that mold, and I think we have to do it through making program changes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Mahler?
Just two questions, a couple bullets. The school-wide enrichment model, are we piloting that this year? Or are we planning to pilot it as a
We had
priority
plans to
in the
pilot it
future?
this year, but we put those on hold because of the literacy pilot.
Got it, okay.
We thought that was too much on our teachers.
It's a lot. Okay, great. Review and modify school schedules. Can you expand on that priority just a little bit? Is there a reason that we're doing that? Or what does that mean?
So, for instance, this past year was a great opportunity for us as we brought in the ASA block to think about the elementary schedule. We also knew that there was a focus now at the earlier grades on some of those early literacy skills to make sure that we had those as part of the school day and thinking about our instructional time guidelines. So we did a lot of that work at the elementary level. I think there's always opportunities, thinking about the middle school day, opportunities to support some of the voice and choice and opportunities for students to take some of those elective courses. So I think we're keeping that out there, that we're always, like our curriculum, we're never done, we're never satisfied with where we are, and we're always looking for opportunities to grow and expand based on student need, based on enrollment levels. There's a lot of different factors that go in. So we're, this year we're looking at our middle school schedule to see opportunities for us to continue to grow and expand.
So we're not talking start time, end time.
No,
We're talking how we
no.
structure the day
What's going on,
internal to
yep.
our existing footprint.
How we use the time that we have with our young people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just a me not understanding the term of art of school schedule and we call that
Yeah.
part something different, or if there's like a word we could add to that bullet to clarify that, because as a parent, you see that and go, have a slight panic there.
No, we would call it school start and end time.
Great.
We're not touching that.
Okay. Good clarification.
We have no plans to do that unless we are directed by the Board of
Well,
Education.
in terms of budget priorities, maybe that's not one. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Is that it? Others? Other questions, concerns? I had, let's see, I had a couple, if I can find them, I might have the, excuse me, second to last bullet, where you indicated expand district-wide investments in upgrading facilities through long-term planning. Does that, so how would this impact our operating budget? I think of that as being more CIP.
Absolutely. And actually, in one of my bullets, I was going to elaborate on this a little further as well. I think it's a combination of both. So there are certainly some projects that would fall within that capital improvement plan. But when you think about the number of pieces that Bureau Veritas has given us to think about, there's some accounts that, like the 4305 and the 4304, the buildings and grounds projects, there's gonna be some that's gonna be coming out of that as a result, that wouldn't meet the threshold for a capital improvement
Right,
plan.
okay.
Because those typically would be large, $100,000 type projects. And some of those items that they have given us don't fall within that threshold.
You'll see when you get the reports, and Mr. Brenner and I are going through line by line right now, just to check for accuracy of, you know, this building was built in this year, et cetera. There's some studies that they recommend that we're like, oh, we should go ahead and do those. So you may see the impact there.
Okay, right. Let me see, I think. I have one other, I don't know if I can find it now. With the world language, continue to expand and diversify world language, are we still, this I'm assuming would be also reflective of our recent completion of K-5 world language, so we've talked about this, the need to really look at what's going on grade 6 and beyond now that our students are coming in with that foundational.
Yeah, and some of our staff also saying, what do we do at 4 or 5, right? So do you really need 6 years of Spanish? And do you do something different with 4 or 5 or both? And of course, the middle school. I don't know that we'll have an answer by 25, 26.
Mm-hmm.
I think mostly what you'll see is a revisit of what's happening in 6th grade and what's the impact of ASL. Of course, it's only 3 weeks old right now, but it's a big hit already. What's the impact on French and Spanish because of ASL? So we anticipate probably a smaller change in 25, 26, giving it some time to take hold.
Okay. And are you still, I think we had talked about this in terms of the mental health supports in schools. Are you still trying to explore any grants?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything for assumptions? Or priorities, I'm sorry, before we move on to the assumptions? Okay, move on.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brennan's going to take the assumptions.
Thank you, Dr. Kataya, Ms. Glennon, members of the board. So in your package, you will find the first reading of the 2025-2026 budget assumptions. At this time, I wanted to highlight and elaborate some of the key components in each one of these bullets. And then after I review, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. And I just also wanted to add that these assumptions are based on a significant amount of research and collaboration with our consultants when necessary. And they're our best educated estimates at this time. So this first bullet is very familiar to us. It discusses the continued increase in costs. This is something that we've probably seen in our own personal life with the strains of the dollar not reaching as far as it used to. And it's something that's not, the school system is not immune to this as well. So despite these challenges, just as we always do, we're going to continue to navigate these circumstances and plan for our 2025-2026 budget. As you are aware, the ARP ESSER funding has ended and districts are no longer able to take advantage of this funding source. We have also just recently been made aware that, from the state, that there's going to be a decrease in some of our entitlement grants, the funding that we're receiving for that. So those two things compacted will also create a decrease in funding and also result in additional funds from the general fund that we need to accommodate that. This next bullet discusses our enrollment, particularly kindergarten enrollment, and the rippling impact of this year's legislative change in entry age. And then when you factor in the students who were ineligible this year with next year's cohort that is planned to come in next year, this may result in the need for additional staff at that kindergarten grade level. Next bullet discusses inflation and recent and also current labor market trends and our negotiated settlements that we've had with different bargaining units, ones that were either settled this year or in previous years, and we're just seeing the actual increase, resulted in an increase of 2.25% and 3.75%, so they came in that range. And then as a reminder to the board, salaries accounted for this year just over 71.5% of our total budget. So this would have a significant impact as of next year. This next bullet pertains directly to the previous assumption. So this year, this upcoming year, we are going to be experiencing a significant number of contract negotiations with a number of our bargaining units as a result of those contracts expiring at the conclusion of next year. So as a result, we anticipate to see an increase in legal fees to accommodate that increase in negotiations that we're going to see in next year's calendar year. We spoke about this one a little bit earlier. As a result of the information that Bureau Veritas has provided to us, we are anticipating an increase in some of our different funding areas, particularly 4304 and 4305, the buildings and grounds projects, to help address some of the needs of our aging facilities. The next bullet on health insurance. So health insurance is always a driver in our budget process. The city's health insurance consultant is currently projecting that we will have an increase of somewhere between 11 and 13%, which is a double-digit increase for next year's budget. So that's something that we are constantly monitoring and in constant collaboration with them to ensure that we're getting the best deal that we possibly can at that time. This next one is no surprise to us. It's something that we've seen over the years. Special ed costs can fluctuate greatly from year to year. This is definitely an account that we try to plan for and anticipate certain challenges that may arise, but as we know, there may be needs that arise that weren't able to be anticipated. And when you have those compounded with the transportation piece of it as well, we're expecting an increase of anywhere between 15 to 20% in this upcoming budget. And then this next one here, so we currently have a contract with Durham School Services that's going to be expiring at the conclusion of this school year. We are currently locked in, as a reminder, we're currently locked in at an artificially low rate that we were able to lock in right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when the times were a little more uncertain there. So we were able to lock in for a long-term contract at that time, and our rates are artificially low when you do a comparative market analysis on this. So we are anticipating that this upcoming school year, our next contract would possibly have an increase of $1 million to bring us up to that market analysis rate that we have right now, bring us up to the current market conditions. This next one discusses as you may be aware, the districts are expected to be in full compliance with the Right to Read Act by the 25-26 school year. And we are currently in the process of piloting 2 state-approved programs. And we anticipate that this could come with a cost of $750,000 to $1 million in its first year of implementation. And that money would be really kind of dedicated towards revision of curriculum, teacher professional learning, materials for the students, and things of that nature. This next bullet discusses that we're planning on our continued participation in the SRO program, School Resource Officer Program, and on our long-standing relationship of contributing 50% of this to this valuable program, and that's assuming that the city is going to contribute their 50% of that side as well. And just as is our normal practice, we're going to continue to consider additional layers of prevention and what their impacts on future budgets may be. And we are always committed to making sure that we have exploring all the viable options to maintain a safe and secure learning environment. And that's something that we will continue to be dedicating ourselves to, of always taking a look at what's next, what else can we possibly do. And then just finally, it's always a top priority for us to continue to research, explore potential efficiencies, and try to ensure that we are maximizing our dollars and making sure that we're being as clear and direct as possible with where we're sending the funding. And efficient. Efficient is the word I was looking for.
Questions for Mr.
Brennan.
Our title last names. How many last names tonight? Sorry.
Call me B.
Mr. B. Mr. B.
Hey, you. Mr. Brennan, any questions for Mr. Brennan? Mr. Smith?
Yeah, just real quick, and you covered it in the last bullet, but I just wanted to asking a question I'm assuming I know the answer to, and I think you just answered it already. But given with the expiration of the ARPA and ESSER, I assume now more than ever you're talking with colleagues in other districts, because all the districts around the state are grappling with this massive drying up of funds and how you solve for that.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's something that's always a consideration of ours, and it needs to be fully expended by September 30th. So at this point, that money that we've used in the past well used and much needed has now dried up, and it's one of those things where it creates that idea of almost like a funding cliff per se.
Mhm.
We talk about that sometimes in budgets where you have these dollars and you're using them and utilizing them, and then now they're gone. So what's next? And that's where we try to find those efficiencies. We try to look for other opportunities, other grants, other places that we can maximize those dollars. And that's something that we will continue to do, and we discuss as districts as well, with neighboring districts.
Yeah, creative problem solving time.
Exactly.
I made a note here, though, that, we'd always talked about the fact that we were careful with our ARP and ESSER money,
Yes.
not to create a spending cliff. We really didn't use it, with the exception of the counselors that we
And we
chose
put a
to
plan in
And we
place.
put a plan in
Yeah,
place to
so,
intentionally
right, correct.
move those
So,
back to the budget.
my expectation was that in terms of the ARP and ESSER money, we were using it more for one-time expenses that weren't going to
Correct.
burden the budget when we were
Correct.
gone.
Yeah,
So,
and usually when you look at like staffing, that could be something that could really create that.
right, so, I wondered if we even needed to have that line in here, because of that.
It is combined with other entitlement grants in the bullet, which are also
So can I give you an
potentially
example
covering
of the ARP
programs.
ESSER, Ms. Glennon? So with our high schools, we provided an after-school credit recovery opportunity with the ARP ESSER funds, and that was, short-lived, time, in a narrow, tight lane. But what we're hearing from our administrators and our school counselors is, wow, that was super beneficial.
Okay.
Can we continue something like that? So while we committed to just during COVID relief time, there's now a notion of, can we give those kids an after-school experience like that in the future? So that would be an example of,
Okay.
while it's not a funding cliff, we had that experience. The question now to Mr. Altieri's department is, so to what degree do our kids need credit recovery, and how does that happen if it's not happening after the school day? And if it can't happen during a school day and you need it after school, then we have the budget for it,
All right,
okay?
thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Mahler?
On the question of trying to predict what's gonna happen to the kindergarten cohort next year. Unclear if it's gonna be a small increase, just sort of absorbed across the board, or if it's actually gonna be a little bump. And if it's a little bump, that bump is going to follow that cohort through first, second, third, fourth, all the way up, obviously. As we're looking at the potential in the budget next year of how to prepare for that, here you reference potentially additional kindergarten classrooms. Are we also doing that with an eye towards adding the additional space as necessary, if that even becomes, there's so many ifs involved in this one here, obviously, where we will potentially need that additional space going forward? And is that enough of a consideration or enough of a likelihood that we need to consider it in other years out also? It's looking a little bit beyond the specifics of this document and the year that we're talking about here, but a relevant point, I think, for us to consider also as we talk about space.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we were down those spaces this year, no, not spaces, sorry, teachers this year, so we'll pop those FTEs back into those spaces, so I think what you bring up is something to consider, the ripple in so many ways, right?
Right. Programming,
Yeah.
FTEs,
Yep,
classrooms,
yep.
like the whole thing. as we
Furniture,
move across. So, yeah, we'll have a much clearer sense once we see what the enrollment numbers look like.
We're
To what that
very
ripple will
interested
be.
to see what our demographers do with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we give them that problem, like you guys figure out what you think is gonna happen with our kindergarten, and then Mr. Giancarlo agrees or disagrees. So we won't have that number actually till November. It takes them that long. So that, it'll be interesting dialogue in January around to see what the demographers thought about that.
It'll be a key side note to help us in our other
Yes,
parallel
correct.
conversations.
It's interesting because the calculations have to bear in mind that it's the same parameters of enrollment will happen, the
Yes.
kindergarten year before. It's gonna be smaller because there's fewer kids anyway. They're all gonna have that same parameter in terms of their, when they can enter kindergarten. So I think it's gonna be an interesting
And
problem
next
to
time we
see.
meet, I'll be giving an enrollment
Right,
update
yeah.
based on October 1st numbers, so we can have this conversation again as to
Yeah.
how close were we to that number.
And it's not gonna tell us what we can expect for the
Crystal
Years
ball,
to come.
crystal ball
Yeah, we don't
opportunity,
have that.
crystal ball opportunity.
Other questions on the assumptions? Ms. Doyle?
First, I'm happy about the ARPA ESSA that the foresight to do the not weaning off, but pulling chunks on.
Yes, yes.
Made a big difference because this is going to be a difficult year in terms of budgeting.
Mhm.
In the same bullet, what are considered typical entitlement grants that we would get grant money for?
Yeah, so
Special ed.
Yep.
IDA.
IDA,
Title
Okay.
one,
Title I,
Title two, Title three, Title four.
So if that's the case, does that, does it actually increase the bullet on special education and what the number be, or is that just such a,
The special ed
No,
grants, the
we
biggest
always
one
are-
we're worried about. We're already getting a lot of signaling that it's gonna be bad. So yes, then we're picking up more. We won't get as much reimbursement.
even in the 15 to 20%, it could be 20 to 25%, 20, 30, like, the increase could be
Did you take that into consideration in the following bullet, I guess?
Did
is
you
probably-
consider
Yeah.
that, Ms. Stewart, in your 15 to 20?
I did.
Okay.
Okay, so that's semi-positive,
Yes.
because I feel like the 15 to 20 is a fairly normal number for
Yeah.
us, sadly. That's it, that's all I have.
So this is coming at a time when the state already doesn't fully fund its excess cost share and things like that for SPED, that there's reducing it even further.
Correct. On that same point, how
Yes.
much did we get, how much reimbursement was last year?
Do you remember the number?
1,500,000.
65%,
65%.
Entitlement grant.
which is the lowest
That
I've
one
seen
number's
it
right.
in several years.
That number's right.
65%?
65%. Okay.
Any question?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Brenner just started to list a number of reimbursement from the state. Could you just,
Yeah, no, I was actually listing what was the actual entitlement grant for that one that she was talking about, which was $1,586,654. That's how much the
7%.
IDEA Part B,
611.
yeah.
And that's the money that comes back to the city.
No, that's the
No.
excess cost grants, they're two different things.
Okay,
Excess cost difference,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
So you want to know what the excess cost grant was that came
no,
back? Oh.
that's helping me. put
Okay.
it all together. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, this comes back at our business meeting for an adoption, formal adoption with a
So,
motion.
Ms. Glennon, because we're trying to make the business part of the business meeting short for your workshop, we'd appreciate feedback on these ahead of time. So if you want content developed, we would have some time to do that.
Okay, I would hope that if there's changes that people are considering that they would bring that up now. Typically during the first reading, we would bring those things up. If people have concerns about any of the bullets, that would happen at this meeting. So if anything does come up, then if you could let me know as soon as possible.
So we'll do a quickie second read, enrollment, and then a quick TMD and disbursement
Right.
report.
And we still have public comment and student reports.
Yep.
As well, so.
And then the rest will be committed to working with Dr. Broderick and Dr.
Correct.
Reynolds. Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have anybody in the audience who'd like to make public comment this evening? Seeing none, I will dispense with reading the public comment statement, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
For a second, Mr. Permender seconds. Is anybody opposed to adjourning at 8:48? Seeing none, we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks. There's such a